So today we are talking about the juvenile justice system and whether the children involved in the End Bad Governance protests should be prosecuted. Welcome to Legal Essentials, where we talk about matters arising from the perspective of the law. Can you remember the hashtag End Bad Governance protest that lasted for 10 days in August? We were aware that people were arrested, right? But we're not keenly aware that children were involved. Hearing it now that children were involved in that situation was very upsetting for most people, including myself. Seeing those children locked up with awaiting trial for treason by the police makes us want to confront the question, what does justice mean for the young children? So today, we're going straight into the heart of the Nigerian juvenile justice system. So buckle up, because this is going to be a very interesting ride. I am here to shock you that there are conflicting definitions as to what a young child is according to the law. These conflicting definitions go beyond what is written in the law. The question, who is considered a juvenile, can be a very difficult question to answer. You would think that there's a simple answer to the question, who is a juvenile? But in Nigeria, that answer is anything but straightforward. The section here depicts immature age and that children under 7 years old are juveniles and cannot be held criminally responsible. And it also goes further to say that children under age 11 cannot be held criminally liable. The accountability of these children between ages 7 and 11 depends on whether they understood the consequences of their actions. Right? And which, let's be honest, is an incredibly difficult thing to determine, even for experts. Children and Young Persons Act is widely used across different states in Nigeria, and it defines the child as anyone under the age of 14 years old. Talking about the Child's Rights Act of 2003, it was supposed to bring Nigeria in line with international standards, which states that children are anyone under the age of 18 years old. So the above definitions have opened the door to several interpretations, potentially leading to confusion in how these cases are to be administered. The three different definitions floating around, each with its own legal implications, worsens this issue. This confusion has real-world consequences, and one of those consequences can be seen in this juvenile case as undue delay. Let's think about the children arrested during the protest. Imagine the likely mistreatment, parental neglect, unequal justice, hunger, fear, mental anguish, and more they may have endured in detention. As we reflect on the police detention of these young children, let's scrape from them the definition of a juvenile. So let's hear from one of the representatives.
Those that are not criminally liable under the law, those are the people that are young ones below the age of 7. Once you are more than 7, you can be charged to court. The only thing is that you need to follow certain procedures to do that. But none of them is less than 7. I think the youngest should be 13. The fact that you are a 13-year-old doesn't mean you cannot be charged to court. So anybody, even in the Children and Young Persons Act, they can still charge you to court because you are 13-year-old. You can go to court. So we have charged them to court for this. On behalf of the federal government of Nigeria, the police has taken the bull by the horn, because these are those who actually are leveraged on the End Bad Governance protest. They hijacked the protest and they are so violent.
The Nigerian police is not wrong in picking one definition amongst the three, but what happens to the rest of the definitions? These conflicting definitions have created cranky loopholes that can be exploited, and this makes it incredibly difficult to ensure that children are treated fairly in the eyes of the tenets of the fundamental human rights and human rights. So, having established that the definitions of the juvenile can be a bit confusing to administrate, let's navigate the dust these definitions could raise. Imagine yourself a judge and a case came before you and the accused persons were young children. What happens then? What justiciable steps would you take to administer your proper justice? What definition would you apply? Would it matter on the circumstances? Is there any relative standard to conform to? Are there reliable precedents to guide your verdict? The most crucial question here is, how has the Nigerian legal system, specifically the juvenile justice system, been administering justice in cases like this? So there are likely two main statutes that come into play here: the Child's Rights Act and the Children and Young Persons Act. So the Child Rights Act aims to give comprehensive protection to the children, while the Children and Young Persons Act focuses more on punishments. The Child Rights Act stresses more on rehabilitation and making sure that interventions are in the best interest of the child, while the Children and Young Persons Act is rooted in a more traditional point of view. It validates punishments such as fines, probations, and even corporal punishments. These statutes have been seen by many people to be harsh but dynamic. Now, the crux of this dilemma: should the children arrested at the End Bad Governance protest be prosecuted? Now, the answer seems to be caught between two conflicting approaches: punishments or rehabilitation. But to really understand it, we need to look at it deeply, right? What do these punishments under the Children and Young Persons Act look like? One is probation, which means that the child is under supervision but still gets to stay in their community. Two is fines. Three is corporal punishment, which allows for physical punishment, right? Now, corporal punishment has been pretty much condemned by almost every international human rights body out there because it is harmful and ineffective. And the fourth is detention. What does that even look like in Nigeria? Are we talking about these children going to prison, or are they like detention centers in place for cases like this? So the problem is the Children and Young Persons Act doesn't clearly define what detention means, and furthermore, this lack of clarity is a big concern as it creates inconsistencies in how detention is being implemented across the country and in different states and facilities. In truth, what we're looking at is a system that's trying really hard to avoid using the word imprisonment when it comes to children, but goes ahead to create all other categories that sound a lot like imprisonment depending on how they are being implemented. We need to have clear guidelines to make sure that when detention is used, it is truly a last resort, and it will be implemented in a way that genuinely prioritizes the benefits of the child. I think we need to reconcile the conflicting definitions of juvenile, and then we need to pick one definition and stick with it. And also we need to look really hard at the punishments that are being administered in cases like this. In administering punishment, I think these are questions that need to be considered. Number one, when it comes to detention, how do we make sure that it is not just a fancy word for imprisonment? And number two, is corporal punishment, which is harmful and insensitive, to be embedded amongst punishments? So this is where the focus on rehabilitation is absolutely crucial. If detention is used, it has to be in facilities that are, specifically designed for these young children. These facilities should prioritize education, mental health support, and vocational training for these children. Now, the goal here should be to empower these young people with positive skills and resources that will successfully enable them to get back into society, to do better and be better. So let's sum this up, right? I don't think the children involved in the End Bad Governance protest should be prosecuted for treason, nor do I think that they should have stayed that long in detention in the first place. I commend the federal government for ordering their release, as any further judicial proceeding on this case could have caused a national outcry and embarrassment because of the multiple lapses inherent in the Nigerian judicial justice system. So to my viewers, do you think juvenile justice exists in Nigeria? Have you seen one? Now remember the girl fatally poisoned her ex-boyfriend and a couple of other people. Have we heard anything from them? Okay. Have you also seen any solid case so far? Still no. So can we relate right now? So this is what I'm saying. We've made a video on this. So if you haven't seen the video, click the link right above and watch it. So moving on, there are a lot of successful models of community-based interventions that can be utilized because it has been proven to work in other countries. The community-based intervention would be a huge step in reforming the Nigerian juvenile justice system. However, it cannot be done overnight, right? So let's remember that the way a society treats its most vulnerable members tells a lot about its values and its commitment to justice. The End Bad Governance case really served as a stark reminder of how urgent we need to reform the system. We need to change the way we think about children. Children have so much potential for growth and innovation. We need to recognize that every child deserves a chance to make something of themselves, regardless of the mistakes in the past. Hence, investing in rehabilitation is not just the right thing to do, it is a smart thing to do because it benefits everyone in the long run. So there we have it, the little you needed to know about the Nigerian juvenile justice system. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, drop a comment, share it to your friends and families, and don't forget to subscribe. I'm your host, Sharon. Till we see again. Ciao.